My name is Mara Aldridge. I am 31 years old, and for almost 22 years my parents treated me like the defective child in a family built on reputation. My sister Celeste was praised for elite degrees, public honors, and a future inheritance. I was mocked for dyslexia, kept out of every serious conversation, and paid barely a sliver of what she earned inside our own company. Then, during Celeste's graduation celebration at the Hawthorne Grand Hotel, with 420 guests watching, a man I had never met placed a sealed envelope in my hand. That envelope proved my parents had lied about me for years. My grandmother had been watching the whole time. She had seen every insult, every exclusion, every quiet betrayal. And before she died, she left me something powerful enough to overturn the Aldridge empire. The Aldridges were old Boston money, the sort of family whose name was engraved on hospital corridors, scholarship funds, and donor walls. My father, Conrad Aldridge, ran Aldridge Urban Holdings, a commercial real estate firm my grandmother Beatrice had started in 1969 from one cramped office in Somerville. By 2025, the company was valued at roughly $104 million. I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was 8. Printed words never sat still for me. Letters slid around, swapped places, and turned ordinary paragraphs into riddles that took me much longer to untangle than other children. My parents did not answer that diagnosis with patience. They answered it with embarrassment. When I was 13, they paid for Celeste's private cello coach, Italian lessons, debate camp, and exam prep from a Yale graduate who charged $475 an hour. When I asked whether I could get help with reading, my mother, Helena, looked tired before I even finished speaking. "Mara, we have already spent enough on evaluations," she said. "At a certain point, we have to be realistic. Not every child is built for academics." I was 13. I thought she was telling the truth, so I built my own ways to survive. Audiobooks became my rescue line. I used sketches, charts, arrows, colors, and diagrams to process what other people absorbed from straight text. Every Sunday evening, I took the train to my grandmother Beatrice's apartment near the Charles, where she sat with me for hours and explained ideas through stories instead of textbooks. "Mara," she told me once, laying her thin hand over mine, "you may move through pages more slowly. But you notice what other people skip. That is not stupidity. It is another kind of sight." I did not understand the weight of those words then. I would later. First, I had to endure years of being the Aldridge family's inconvenient secret. In December 2019, 24 relatives gathered around the polished dining table in my parents' Beacon Hill townhouse. Crystal fixtures glowed above catered courses and imported wine, all part of the annual Aldridge performance of flawlessness. My father took his place at the end of the table and raised his glass. "I have news," he said, in the smooth executive voice he used when he wanted a room to belong to him. "Celeste has been admitted to Kingsley Law with a full fellowship." Applause burst around the table. Celeste lowered her eyes with practiced humility. "My older daughter," my father continued, shining with pride, "will be the first Aldridge in decades to attend Kingsley. She is going to lead this family and this company into an extraordinary future." More clapping. Uncle Martin squeezed Celeste's shoulder. Aunt Vivienne dabbed at her eyes with her linen napkin. Then my father looked down the table and found me. "And Mara," he said, pausing just long enough for the room to feel it. The warmth left his voice. "Well, Mara made it to dinner." A few relatives laughed because they did not know what else to do. Celeste laughed too. She did not look at me. She did not defend me. She simply joined them. I stared at the food on my plate until it blurred. Under the table, a hand reached for mine. Dry skin, narrow fingers, a gentle squeeze. My grandmother Beatrice sat across from me, and when I lifted my eyes, I saw anger in hers. Not at me. At her own son. She said nothing that night. But 4 months later, she asked me to come to her apartment because there was something she needed me to keep safe. I did not know then that the cruelty at that holiday dinner, witnessed by 24 people, had started a clock that would take more than 5 years to reach zero. After I graduated from a public university in 2023, not an Ivy-level school, never one of those, I applied for a job at Aldridge Urban Holdings. I wanted to prove I could be useful. I wanted the family business to be a doorway for me too. My father hired me as an office coordinator at $48,500 a year. That same spring, Celeste came in as Chief Legal Strategy Officer. Her salary was $315,000 plus bonuses. My work was copying reports, reserving conference rooms, updating calendars, and carrying coffee to executives who forgot my name by the time I turned around. I was never invited into strategy meetings. I was never asked to review a contract, but I paid attention. During long hours beside the copier, I learned something about myself. I could see patterns before other people did. When executives discussed deals in hallways, I mapped out the relationships between lenders, tenants, investors, and risks in a notebook nobody ever asked to see. The same habits I had created to get around dyslexia had turned into a talent. Grandma Beatrice had helped me sharpen it. On Sundays, she would spread old agreements from the company's earliest years across her table and teach me to read them as structures. "Your father reads a contract like a man searching for leverage," she told me in 2020 before her illness became impossible to ignore. "You read it like someone looking at a building. You see where the beams connect." That day she handed me a small walnut box with brass hinges. "Keep this hidden," she said. "Do not open it yet. When it matters, you will know." I brought it home, placed it at the back of my closet, and tried not to think about the strange seriousness in her voice. It was April 2020 when she gave it to me. She was 84 then, thinner than I remembered, her silver hair soft around her temples, her shoulders smaller beneath a wool cardigan. But her eyes were just as sharp as ever. "Sit with me, Mara." I sat in the living room where she had taught me for so many years. Photographs covered the walls. Beatrice unlocking her first Somerville office in 1969, Beatrice shaking hands with Governor Hale, Beatrice receiving a Women in Commerce award in 1991. There were almost no pictures of my father running the company. "I built Aldridge Urban Holdings from nothing," she said. "One room, one assistant, and 56 years of work. Conrad inherited it. He did not create it. He does not understand what it means to make something out of nothing. Grandma, he measures people by credentials, titles, and how well they perform in expensive rooms." She leaned toward me. "I measure people by how they treat someone who cannot defend herself. You, Mara, are the only person in this family who still knows how to be gentle." She pressed the box into my palms. "There is something inside that may help you one day. Not now. You are not ready, and Conrad is not done revealing himself. When the moment comes, you will know." I wanted to ask why me, what was inside, and what she thought my father would do. But she changed the subject to the book on her side table and the herbs she was trying to grow in the window. 22 months later, she died of pancreatic cancer. I was holding her hand in hospice. I was the only relative in the room. The walnut box stayed closed in my closet. In May 2025, the email arrived on a Wednesday afternoon. Subject: Confidential Role Consolidation. "Dear Ms. Aldridge, as part of our continuing efficiency review, your current position will be discontinued effective August 3, 2025. Human Resources will contact you regarding transition compensation." I read the message 4 times. The words shifted and swam, then settled into the same brutal fact. They had decided to fire me. That night I stayed after everyone else, pretending to sort files no one needed. Through the wall between my desk area and my father's corner office, I heard voices, my father and my mother. "She cannot still be here when Celeste moves up," Conrad said. "It looks ridiculous. The future CEO's sister working the front office, people will talk." "Talk about what?" my mother asked. "Why she has never advanced. Why we kept her away from leadership." A pause. "Why she is like that." My mother's answer was quiet, almost kind, which made it worse. "We tried, Conrad, we truly did. Some children simply do not have the capacity." "Exactly. She needs to leave. We will give her a decent severance. She can find something more appropriate for her skill level." I pressed my hand flat against the wall. I made $48,500 a year. My share of a cramped apartment in Alston with 2 roommates was $2,300 a month. I had almost no savings. If I lost the job, I had maybe 9 weeks before my life collapsed. But fear about rent was not what froze me. It was something deeper. If I let them erase me without a fight, if I let their version of me become the official one, my whole future would be stamped as the disappointment of the family. Not because I had actually failed, but because no one had ever allowed me to try. Celeste's graduation party was the next night. I wondered what else my father had prepared. June 12, 2025, the Hawthorne Grand Hotel Commonwealth Ballroom. 420 guests filled the room. Investors, brokers, judges, partners from old firms, relatives I had not seen since childhood. Crystal chandeliers scattered light across ivory tablecloths. A 10-piece ensemble played standards near the windows. This was my father's stage, the place where he could perform the roles he loved most. Patriarch, dealmaker, generous benefactor, man in control. I stood near the entrance tugging at my plain navy dress. It had cost $92 at a discount shop, and it was the nicest thing I owned. Around me, women shimmered in designer gowns and men wore tuxedos that probably cost more than my rent. My mother reached me before I could find my seat. "Mara." Her eyes traveled over my drugstore makeup, the dress, the worn heels. Her mouth tightened. "You could not manage anything more polished. This is what I have." "I see." She adjusted a gold bracelet from a jeweler on Newberry Street. "You are at table 34 near the staff doors. Please avoid attracting attention." "Of course." "And Mara." She leaned close enough that her perfume filled my throat. "Tonight belongs to Celeste. Whatever resentment you believe you have earned, swallow it. Do not shame us." She walked away before I could answer. Table 34 sat at the edge of the ballroom, half hidden by a column. My tablemates were distant cousins who remembered my name only after checking their place cards. From there I could see the stage, the enormous portrait of Celeste in her Kingsley regalia, and the banner that read, "Congratulations, Celeste Aldridge, Kingsley Law Class of 2025. Near the main doors, a silver-haired man in a charcoal suit stood alone. He did not speak to guests or touch the champagne. He only watched the room. Then his gaze found me, and a cold thread moved down my back. At 8:40 p.m., the ensemble stopped. The lights softened. A spotlight found my father on the stage with a champagne flute in his hand. "Friends, colleagues, family," he began, "thank you for joining us to honor an exceptional young woman." People were applauding before he finished. Celeste graduated in the top 6% of her class. She completed a clerkship with Judge Marlowe, and last month she accepted a senior associate track at Bancroft and Vail in record time. But tonight I am not only celebrating what she has done, I am announcing what comes next. Celeste stepped beside him in a green Lavrenti gown, glowing under the lights. Effective immediately, I am confirming Celeste Aldridge as the primary heir to my estate. That includes our family residence on Ashburton Place, currently valued at $15 million, my Lucent Aero sedan, and most importantly. He paused, letting the room lean in. The chief executive position of Aldridge Urban Holdings when I retire. The ballroom erupted. People rose. Cameras flashed. Celeste dabbed at her eyes with perfect restraint. 420 people celebrated my replacement, and not one of them turned toward table 34. A cousin beside me, a woman I had last seen at a funeral 9 years earlier, leaned over. "Mara, isn't it? So what does that leave for you?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. What could I say? That I had just been publicly removed from my own family. That the termination notice waiting in my inbox was only part of the plan. That every old fear about being worthless had just been announced in front of everyone my father cared about impressing. The applause began to fade. Celeste hugged our father while photographers crowded the stage. Then the silver-haired man by the door started walking toward me. He moved slowly, deliberately, as if he had been waiting all night for that single cue. When he stopped at my table, I saw that he was older than I first thought, somewhere in his late 60s, with deep-set eyes and the posture of a man who had spent decades in courtrooms. "Ms. Aldridge." "Yes," I straightened. "Can I help you? My name is Owen Whitcomb." He removed a business card from his jacket. Cream paper, raised letters, Varick and Lyle, counselors at law. "I represented your grandmother." "My grandmother?" The words hit my chest. "Beatrice died more than 3 years ago." "I know." He did not sit, and his expression did not soften. "She left something for you with extremely precise instructions about the timing." From inside his jacket, he took out a heavy ivory envelope sealed with dark blue wax and a notary mark. "What is that?" "Her will," he said. "The valid one, the one your father has never seen." I stared at the envelope. The seal showed Varick and Lyle, June 3, 2020, barely weeks after she had given me the walnut box. "I do not understand. Mrs. Aldridge instructed me to deliver it on the day your father disinherited you in public." Owen looked toward the stage, where Conrad and Celeste were still absorbing applause. "I believe that condition has now been met." My hands trembled as I took it. "Mr. Whitcomb, what is inside?" For the first time, a hint of warmth reached his face. "She told me to say this. Give it to Mara when Conrad finally shows her exactly what he is. By then, she will be ready." He returned his card to me. "Call when you need counsel. My number is on the back." Then he disappeared into the crowd. I could not breathe in that ballroom. I slipped through the staff doors and found an empty service corridor near the kitchen. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Celebration became a muffled pulse behind the walls. My hands trembled while I cracked the seal. Inside were 3 dense pages, a notarized signature, and the date June 3, 2020. I read slowly, forcing the letters to settle. "I, Beatrice Rowan Aldridge, being of sound mind, revoke all previous testamentary instruments and declare this document to be my final will and testament." My eyes caught on the paragraph in the middle. "To my granddaughter, Mara Rowan Aldridge, I leave 52% of my shares in Aldridge Urban Holdings, LLC, presently valued at approximately $53 million, together with every voting right attached to those shares." I read it once. Then again, 52%, controlling interest. The will continued. "I make this gift fully aware of how my son Conrad has treated Mara. She has been ignored, belittled, and denied the chance to contribute, not because she lacks ability, but because she was denied support. Mara is not slow. Mara was abandoned. I will not permit Conrad's prejudice to govern my company after my death." A sob lodged in my throat. Grandma had seen it, all of it. Then came the condition. To activate this bequest, Mara must file a written demand for an emergency board session within 60 hours of receiving this document. If she fails to act inside that period, this instrument shall be void, and my estate shall pass under my 2016 will. 60 hours. The deadline would land on June 15 at 8:40 a.m. I leaned against the cold corridor wall, the paper pressed to my chest. My grandmother had not given me comfort. She had placed a weapon in my hands. The choice now was whether I had the nerve to lift it. Owen Whitcomb was waiting near the coat check when I came back out. "You read it." "The 60-hour clause," I whispered. "Why would she do that?" "Because she knew you." He handed me another card, this one with his direct number written on it. "She believed that if there were no deadline, you might talk yourself into waiting. The limit is not a trap, it is permission. Permission to stop hoping your family will revise its opinion of you and to claim what was legally left in your hands." Beyond the ballroom doors, my father was still visible posing with Celeste. My mother moved from guest to guest as if the congratulations belonged to her too. If I invoked the will, I would burn down what little remained of my family. My parents would call it betrayal. Celeste would call it jealousy. But if I stayed quiet, I would confirm every insult. I would become the incapable daughter, the slow one, the girl who did not matter. "Ms. Aldridge," Owen said, cutting through my panic. "Your grandmother spent the last part of her life preparing for this exact moment. She believed in you. The only question left is whether you do." I looked at the signature on the page, at the name of the woman who had held my hand under dinner tables and taught me to see contracts like buildings. "I will call you in the morning," I said. "We are requesting that meeting." Owen almost smiled. "She said you would." I am going to pause here for a moment. If you have ever been treated like the person who could be ignored by the people who should have protected you, comment the word enough below. I want to know I am not the only one who has had to learn my worth the hard way. And keep watching, because what happened in that boardroom changed my life. Now back to the story. That night in my tight Alston apartment, I finally opened the walnut box. My roommates were asleep. A street lamp outside supplied the only light, striping my bed in orange while I sat cross-legged with the box in my lap. The hinges creaked when I lifted the lid. Inside was a handwritten letter on Beatrice's personal stationery, an old agreement stamped 1969, and a slim flash drive that had clearly been added years later. I picked up the letter first. "My dearest Mara, if you are reading this, Owen did what I asked, and your father did what I feared. I am sorry I could not shield you while I was alive. I am trying to shield you now. The old document enclosed here is the original partnership agreement from 1969, when I founded Aldridge Urban Holdings with two partners who are both gone now. Conrad has never bothered to read it. It states that founder shares carry permanent voting authority and cannot be diluted, reassigned, or stripped without board approval. The drive contains something else. In 2019, Conrad introduced a resolution to reduce my voting power from 52% to 12%. His public reason was that I was too old to understand modern markets. His true reason was that I stood between him and full control. The board defeated him by 3 votes. Mine was one of them. I never forgot what he tried to take from me. I never forgave how he treated you to make his case, as if making you look helpless somehow made me look unfit. Use this carefully, Mara. Do this for justice, not vengeance. All my love, Grandma Beatrice. I connected the drive to my laptop and opened a PDF titled February 2019 Board Minutes. My father's attempt to strip power from his own mother was documented, dated, and backed up. June 13, 2025, 9:18 a.m. Marjorie Bell answered on the second ring. "Mara Aldridge," she said, her voice rough with age and cigarettes and the kind of laughter that had survived too much. "I wondered when you would find me. You know who I am. Sweetheart Beatrice and I built half the waterfront together in the 70s. She talked about you all the time." After a beat, she added, "She told me about the will before she died." I tightened my grip on the phone. "Then you know what I am about to do." "I know what you are thinking about doing. That is not the same thing." Her tone sharpened into business. "An emergency board petition requires 4 directors. I can sign as one. You need 3 more. Can you help me reach them?" "I can do better." Papers rustled behind her. Conrad is not as loved as he imagines. His style is, let us say, imperial. At least 5 directors have complained to me privately. They have been waiting for someone else to move first. Hope sparked in my chest. Who? Lionel Greer, Anita Rao, Peter Caldwell. All 3 have been humiliated by Conrad in closed session. I will call them. She paused again. Mara, be clear about this. It will be ugly. Your father will fight. Celeste will fight. They will say cruel things. They have said cruel things all my life, I said. At least this time I get to answer. Marjorie laughed, warm and real. Beatrice always said there was iron under your quiet. I can hear it now. She cleared her throat. I will have the petition ready tonight. Emergency session, June 14, 10:30 a.m., Aldridge House, 37th floor. Thank you, Marjorie. Thank me after you walk into that room. On June 13, Conrad learned about the petition at 4:25 p.m. I know because Celeste called me 38 minutes later, furious but trying not to sound it. What have you done? I sat at my desk with a stack of vendor files open in front of me. You'll need to be more specific. Dad just received notification from the board secretary. There is an emergency session tomorrow called by Marjorie Bell and 3 other directors. Her silence cut like glass. Marjorie has not called an emergency session in 12 years. What did you do? Perhaps she is worried about the way the company is being run. Do not play clever with me, Mara. If this is some attempt to embarrass us because of last night, I am doing my job, Celeste. Same as always. She hung up. Less than half an hour later, my father strode past my desk toward his office. He did not look at me. He slammed the door hard enough to shake the glass. His voice carried through the wall while he made a call. Absurd waste of time. Marjorie is probably losing her grip. We will let her speak and move on. No, I am not concerned. Mara, for God's sake, Celeste, she struggles with basic spreadsheets. She threatens no one. I smiled. For once, being underestimated was useful. That night I prepared. I printed 4 copies of the will. I saved the 2019 board minutes to my phone as backup. I wrote a short statement, not emotional, not accusatory, just facts in order. Owen confirmed he would attend as authenticating counsel. At 11:07 p.m., Marjorie texted, petition filed. See you tomorrow. Beatrice would be proud. I barely slept, but the feeling in my chest was not only fear, it was anticipation. June 14, 2025. 10:12 a.m. Aldridge House. The elevator opened onto the 37th floor. Glass walls, pale stone, quiet carpeting, corporate beauty designed to make people feel small. I stepped out in a gray blazer borrowed from one of my roommates. It was too broad in the shoulders. In my hand was a second-hand leather portfolio I had bought for $16. The guard outside the boardroom lifted his hand. Name, Mara Aldridge. He checked his tablet and frowned. You are not listed as an approved attendee. I work for Aldridge Urban Holdings and I have business before the board. Ma'am, this is restricted. I cannot allow. Is there a problem? Celeste stood behind me. She wore a white power suit and a silk scarf with the effortless polish of someone who had never doubted her right to enter rooms like this. Mara, her smile was sharp at the edges. Why are you here? I have information for the board. Information, she laughed, loudly enough for the guard to hear. About what? You manage copier codes. The topic is confidential. You do not even know what cap rate means. Capitalization rate, I said. It is not mystical. Her smile faltered. Before she could answer, our father came into view at the far end of the corridor with 2 senior executives beside him. What is happening? Mara wants into the board meeting, Celeste said. I was explaining that she cannot simply wander in. Conrad looked at me as he always had, as if I were a flaw in the wallpaper. Mara, return to your desk. This has nothing to do with you. Actually, a voice said from inside the room, it has everything to do with her. Marjorie Bell appeared in the doorway. She was 75, silver-haired, and carried the quiet authority of someone who had been closing deals before my father owned a suit. I invited her. She is standing to speak. Let her through. Conrad's jaw tightened. For a second, I thought he might block the door himself. But Marjorie had served on that board for 35 years, and in that room her authority was real. Fine, my father said, his voice cold. Let her make whatever little presentation she has prepared. We will see how long it takes. The boardroom was smaller than I expected. An oval cherrywood table, 13 leather chairs, framed portraits of former executives. Above the fireplace hung my grandmother's portrait. Her painted eyes seemed aimed directly at me. 13 directors took their seats. Conrad sat at the head. Celeste took the chair to his right, not yet a director, but placed like an heir. I was sent to the far end, the corporate version of a children's table. Owen Whitcomb sat in a corner with his briefcase. He gave me one small nod. Miles Rourke, the board chair, an elegant man in his late 60s who had spent decades beside my grandmother, opened the session. This emergency meeting was called by Marjorie Bell, Lionel Greer, Anita Rao, and Peter Caldwell. Marjorie, you may begin. Marjorie stood. Thank you, Miles. I will be brief. The issue concerns a document that has recently surfaced and may alter who controls this company's ownership. I am giving my speaking time to Ms. Mara Aldridge. Every face turned toward me. Celeste smirked. My father leaned back with exaggerated boredom. I stood. My hand surprised me by staying calm. Thank you, Ms. Bell, and thank you to the board for hearing me. What I am about to present may surprise several people in this room. I ask only that you review the evidence before deciding what it means. My father sighed loudly. I ignored him. Before I could continue, he lifted one hand. Miles, before we spend valuable board time on this, I need to provide context. He stood and buttoned his jacket with deliberate patience. Mara is my daughter. I love her, of course, but she is unqualified to speak to this board about business. She holds a clerical role. She has no legal education, no finance background, no experience in strategy. Celeste joined in with a voice coated in fake sympathy. Mara also has dyslexia. Reading is very difficult for her. We have tried to help, but some limitations cannot be solved by effort alone. A few directors shifted uneasily. My father continued. What we are watching is a distressed young woman acting out after last night's family announcement. Sibling resentment can. Mr. Aldridge, Miles Rourke said, cutting through him like a gavel, you will be given time to respond. Ms. Aldridge was granted the floor, she may use it. My father sat. His expression promised punishment. Celeste caught my eye and mouthed, "Stop embarrassing yourself." I looked from her to him and felt something inside me become still. They were not protecting me. They were not protecting the company. They were protecting the story in which I was nothing. Thank you, Mr. Rourke. I removed the document from my portfolio. I am not here to discuss my reading speed. I am here to discuss this. I raised the will high enough for every director to see it. Conversation died at once. This document is the last testamentary instrument signed by Beatrice Rowan Aldridge, founder of Aldridge Urban Holdings, notarized June 3, 2020. My father's face emptied of color. That is impossible, he said. My mother's will was executed in 2016. I possess it. What you possess is the earlier will. My voice stayed even. Under Massachusetts estate law, a later valid will revokes earlier testamentary documents. This one was executed 4 years after the version you have. I slid it to Miles. Mr. Whitcomb, I said, turning toward Owen, would you please authenticate the document? Owen stood and approached the table. I am Owen Whitcomb, partner at Varick and Lyle. I served as Beatrice Aldridge's personal attorney from 2010 until her death in 2022. I confirm that I was present when she signed it on June 3, 2020. 2 independent witnesses also signed, and First Atlantic Trust holds the original in escrow. Miles studied the pages. His eyebrows rose. This leaves 52% of Aldridge Urban Holdings to. He looked up. To you, Ms. Aldridge. Murmurs moved around the table. "It is fake," Celeste said, but the certainty had gone out of her voice. "It is not," Owen replied at once. "And I strongly advise you not to allege fraud without evidence, Ms. Aldridge. Varick and Lyle's records are complete." Conrad struck the tabletop with his hand. "This is nonsense. My mother was sick. Someone took advantage of her." "Manipulated?" I took out my phone. "Then perhaps you can explain this." I played the audio from the 2019 board meeting. My father's voice filled the room. "Beatrice is 83. She does not understand modern real estate finance. I moved to reduce her voting rights to 12%. The clip ended. The silence after it felt solid. "That was a private board discussion," Conrad said, his face turning dark red. "A discussion my grandmother attended," I said. "She recorded it as a shareholder preserving her own rights." Miles set the will down. His expression had hardened. "Ms. Aldridge read the relevant section into the record." I nodded and took one breath. "To my granddaughter, Mara Rowan Aldridge, I leave 52% of my shares in Aldridge Urban Holdings LLC, together with every voting right attached to those shares." I paused. "I make this gift fully aware of how my son Conrad has treated Mara. She has been ignored, belittled, and denied the chance to contribute, not because she lacks ability, but because she was denied support." Celeste made a small sound, almost a choke. I kept reading. "Mara is not slow. Mara was abandoned. I will not permit Conrad's prejudice to govern my company after my death. Conrad has confused credentials with character and titles with value. He tried to take my voting rights because I saw him clearly. He diminished Mara because she reflected a kind of decency he refuses to learn." My father's hands were trembling. "I made this company out of nothing, and I decide who is trusted with its future. That person is Mara." Miles removed his glasses. "Owen, in your legal opinion, is this binding?" "Yes. The 2016 instrument is superseded. As of now, Mara Aldridge is the majority shareholder of Aldridge Urban Holdings." Marjorie smiled quietly. Lionel Greer and Anita Rao exchanged a look. For the first time I could remember, my father looked at me with something besides contempt. Fear. "This proves nothing," Celeste said, though her voice had become brittle. "Even if the will survives challenge, Mara has no business experience. She cannot run a company." "I am not asking to run it." I addressed the table. "I am asking the board to consider the facts." I pulled the 2019 minutes from my portfolio. February 21, 2019. Conrad Aldridge proposed Resolution 1908, reducing Beatrice Aldridge's voting shares from 52% to 12%. His stated rationale, I found the line. "The founder can no longer comprehend current commercial operations." Out of context, Conrad snapped. The resolution failed by 3 votes. Beatrice voted against it. Marjorie Bell voted against it. Peter Caldwell voted against it. "Is that accurate?" Marjorie nodded. "It is. Beatrice called me that evening." She was not frightened of losing. She knew he lacked the votes. She was devastated because the child she raised had tried to seize what she built. "This is old history," my father said. "No," I replied. "It is evidence that my grandmother had capacity and motive when she wrote the 2020 will. She was protecting herself from you, and she was protecting me." Miles looked around the table. "Does anyone have documentation that contradicts what has been presented?" Silence. "Conrad." My father's jaw moved, but no words came. "Celeste!" My sister looked down at the tabletop. Her polished composure was gone. Lionel Greer spoke for the first time. "Miles, legal counsel needs to verify this before we proceed." "Agreed," Miles said. "We will recess for 20 minutes. Owen, remain available." The directors rose. Conversations broke into low clusters. My father did not move. He remained motionless, eyes fixed on his mother's portrait. I wondered whether he felt watched. 20 minutes became 50. The board's counsel, a narrow man named Alan Brewer, spent the recess calling Varick and Lyle, First Atlantic Trust and the Probate Records Office. I sat alone at the far end of the table. Owen brought me water. Marjorie squeezed my shoulder when she passed. My father and Celeste stood in the corner, whispering fiercely. Their argument grew sharper with each minute. Finally, Brewer returned and murmured into Miles Rourke's ear. Miles's face shifted from surprise to resignation. "Please take your seats." Everyone returned. The room felt brittle. "Our legal counsel has confirmed the following." Miles consulted his notes. "The document Ms. Aldridge presented is valid under Massachusetts law and supersedes all prior testamentary instruments. Effective immediately, Mara Rowan Aldridge holds 52% of Aldridge Urban Holdings shares." Someone inhaled sharply. "Additionally, as majority shareholder, Ms. Aldridge has the right to bring motions before the board, including motions regarding executive leadership." He looked at me. "Ms. Aldridge, do you have a motion?" I stood. "I do." Conrad rose too. "Miles, this is—" "Sit down, Conrad," Miles said, with steel I had not heard from him before. "Ms. Aldridge has the floor." My father lowered himself into the chair, color draining from his face. I looked at the 13 people around the table. An hour earlier, most of them had not believed I belonged in the room. Now they waited for my decision. I could have demanded my father's removal. I could have tried to destroy him in the exact way he had tried to erase me. I thought of my grandmother. "I am not moving to fire Conrad Aldridge as CEO." The tension shifted. Celeste's head snapped up. Even Marjorie seemed surprised. "What I am moving for is a confidence vote. The directors will determine whether Conrad Aldridge retains its confidence as chief executive of Aldridge Urban Holdings. If a majority votes no confidence, he resigns according to the bylaws. If a majority votes confidence, I will not interfere in daily operations while serving as majority shareholder." Celeste stood. "This is ridiculous. You are turning corporate governance into some revenge performance." "No," I said, meeting her eyes. "This is the process Grandma Beatrice wrote into the bylaws 38 years ago. If Dad has the board's trust, he has nothing to fear." Miles studied me for a long moment. Respect, or something close to it, crossed his face. "Is there a second?" "Seconded," Marjorie said immediately. "Then we vote. Those expressing confidence in Conrad Aldridge as chief executive, please raise a hand." 4 directors lifted their hands, my father's loyalists. "Those expressing no confidence." 8 hands rose. Miles counted twice and set down his pen. "The motion passes 8-4 with 1 abstention. He turned to my father. "Mr. Aldridge, under Section 12.6 of the bylaws, you have 35 days to tender your resignation." My father said nothing. He stood and looked at me. Really looked at me. I expected rage, maybe hatred, maybe threats. What I saw was worse. Recognition. He finally understood how completely he had underestimated me. Then he left the room in silence. I know some of you may be asking why I did not simply remove him. Why offer a vote at all? Because revenge is not the same as justice. Because tearing someone apart does not repair what they broke in you. And because my grandmother did not teach me cruelty. She taught me fairness. If that matters to you, subscribe to Dull Pain Stories and turn on notifications, because the story did not end when that vote passed. Now back to what happened after the room emptied. Conrad stopped me in the private hallway beyond the boardroom. Helena stood beside him. Clearly someone had summoned her while we were recessed. Her makeup was streaked from crying. "You," my father said, voice barely controlled. "You ungrateful, scheming—" "Conrad," my mother whispered, gripping his arm. "Not here. She destroyed this family in front of the board." I held my ground. Nothing was destroyed by me. The truth simply reached the room. "The truth?" His laugh was harsh. "Your grandmother was vulnerable. That attorney must have." Grandma wrote that after you tried to take her voting rights, she saw you clearly. My voice did not shake. I was not the betrayal that cost you, your betrayal of her was. Helena stepped forward. Mara, sweetheart, you need to understand. We thought we were protecting you. You always struggled. We did not want to put too much pressure on you. You were not protecting me, I said. You were erasing me. Every holiday dinner, every family photo, every conversation where Celeste's achievements filled the room and I disappeared. That was not protection. That was abandonment. That is not fair. No, I said, meeting her eyes. It was never fair. I have used my entire life trying to prove that I deserve to belong to this family. I am finished proving it. The papers speak for themselves. My father grabbed my arm. This is not over. We will challenge the will. I pulled free. You will lose. You know that. Grandma planned for every objection, including yours. I walked to the elevator. Behind me, my mother called, Mara, wait. I did not wait. For the first time, I did not need their permission to walk away. When the elevator shut, my parents disappeared behind the metal doors. I rested against the brushed metal wall and finally breathed. The adrenaline of the past hours ebbed, and something unexpected rose in its place. Grief. I had just severed the old hope I had carried since childhood, the hope that if I stayed patient, quiet, useful, and easy to overlook, my parents might one day see me. That hope died in that elevator. I had killed it myself. By the time I reached the lobby, my eyes were dry and my borrowed blazer was back in place. Owen Whitcomb waited near security. That was, he searched for a word, extraordinary. It was necessary. Beatrice would have agreed. He walked beside me toward the exit. What now? Now I go home and sleep. Then I understand who I am without the family I kept imagining would appear. I glanced back toward the elevators. And the company, I do not want to be CEO, I never did. I want Grandma's company run by people who care about it, not by people who treat it like a crown. Owen nodded. The board will ask you to discuss transition plans and your role. I know, but not today. We stopped at the revolving doors. Sunlight hit my face as I stepped outside. Today I just need to be Mara Aldridge, not a symbol, not a victim, not a shareholder. Tomorrow I start building something else. June 15, 2025, Conrad Aldridge signed his resignation letter at 5:10 p.m. I was not present. I learned it from an email Miles Rourke sent me. Ms. Aldridge, your father has tendered his resignation effective July 20, 2025. The board has appointed me interim CEO while a permanent search is conducted. The board has also voted to offer you a formal role as strategic advisor in your capacity as majority shareholder. This would give you a voice in major decisions as determining your long-term relationship with the company. Regards, Miles Rourke. I read it 3 times. Habit. Then I forwarded it to Owen. He answered less than an hour later. Fair terms. I see no trap. Congratulations, Mara. That night, the company sent a message to every employee. Effective July 20, Conrad Aldridge will step down as CEO of Aldridge Urban Holdings. Miles Rourke will serve as interim CEO. The board also welcomes Mara Aldridge as strategic advisor because of her controlling shareholder position. We extend thanks to Conrad his years with the company and wish him the best. My phone filled with messages. People I had worked beside for 2 years, people who had never learned how to pronounce my name without checking, suddenly wanted coffee, lunch, a chance to reconnect. I ignored most of them. One message I kept. It came from Nina Suarez, an executive assistant who had joined the company in 1990 and had worked directly with my grandmother. Mara, Beatrice spoke about you constantly. She said you noticed what others missed. I did not fully understand until today. Welcome to the room. She would be proud. I saved that message. Sometimes the validation that does not come from family means more. A week later, the story became public. Commonwealth Business Review ran the headline, Aldridge Urban Holdings Shakeup, Founder's granddaughter takes control after Hidden will emerges. The article did not print my name directly. Privacy rules and corporate discretion kept it vague. But everyone in Boston real estate knew who it meant. In a dramatic shift, the presumed heir to the Aldridge Urban Holdings empire has lost position to a controlling shareholder previously unknown to the public. Sources close to the board describe the leadership change as past due, pointing to long-running worries about the former chief executive's leadership. Conrad and Helena canceled their appearance at the Harbor Arts Gala. Their publicist cited health concerns. 3 investment partners asked to sit down with me directly. They did not route the request through my father or only through Miles. After long conversations, 2 confirmed they would keep their projects with Aldridge Urban Holdings. "We have been worried about Conrad for years," one partner admitted. "Beatrice built a serious company. It is good to see someone protecting what she meant it to be." The social consequences spread outward. My parents' friends suddenly remembered prior commitments. Charity invitations slowed. The Aldridge name, once a key to any Beacon Hill door, now came with a quiet question mark. I did not celebrate their humiliation. I did not grieve it either. Marjorie called me that Saturday. "How are you holding up?" "I do not know yet. Ask me in half a year." "Fair," she paused. "Beatrice would have handled it the way you did. The confidence vote instead of the axe. Giving him one chance he did not earn. She used to say mercy is the strongest move on the board." I thought about that after we hung up. Mercy was not weakness. Mercy was a choice. And for once, the choice had been mine. On July 5, 2025, 3 weeks after that board session, my phone lit up at 2:15. "Mara." My mother's voice sounded smaller than I had ever heard it. "Can we talk? Only us?" I said yes to meeting her at a cafe in the seaport, somewhere neutral where my father was unlikely to appear with lawyers. Helena had arrived before me, and she seemed suddenly older. Careful makeup could not hide the exhaustion beneath it. "Thank you for coming," she said, wrapping her hands around a cup she had not touched. "I know I do not deserve that. Why did you ask me here, Mom?" "To apologize." The word broke as it came out. "For all of it, for what we said, for what we allowed, for what we pretended not to see." "Are you apologizing because you are sorry?" I asked, "or because the balance of power changed?" Flinched. The question sat between us like smoke. "Both," she admitted at last. "I am ashamed that it is both. I was obsessed with Celeste's success, with the image of our family. I told myself we were sparing you expectations you could not meet. That was a lie. I hid behind that excuse because guilt was easier to avoid than face. You let Dad call me useless in front of relatives and business partners. You never once stopped him." "I know." A tear slid down her cheek. "I cannot undo it." "But Mara, I do not want to lose you completely. Maybe that is already impossible, but I had to try." I studied the woman who had once braided my hair and later let my birthday pass without noticing. "I cannot pretend the last 22 years did not happen," I said. "But I am willing to try building something new if it is honest." She nodded, unable to speak. It was not forgiveness, but it was a beginning. In September 2025, Celeste called while I was walking through the public garden. I almost let it ring out. "Mara," she said when I answered, "I have not earned the right to ask, but would you meet me? I need to say something." We sat on a bench near the lagoon. The late summer heat pressed down around us. Celeste looked different. The armor of perfection she had worn since childhood had cracked. There were shadows under her eyes, and her hair was pulled back without care. "I have been in therapy," she said immediately. "Since June, 3 times a week. That is good." "It is awful," she laughed without humor. "Apparently being the chosen child is not a prize, it is another cage." I waited. Dad needed me to be perfect. Every grade, every award, every offer was not an achievement. It was the minimum for the next demand. She looked at the water. "And what they did to you, I told myself it was just the family dynamic, that you were different." That staying quiet kept things stable. You were not keeping me safe. No, she finally looked at me. I was keeping myself safe. If I defended you, I might become the target too. I am not offering that as an excuse. I am finally being honest. What exactly are you asking of me, Celeste? Nothing. I do not deserve anything. Her voice cracked. I only wanted you to know that I see you clearly now. I mean that. And I am sorry I waited so long to look. Silence settled between us, two sisters raised under one roof who barely knew each other. I cannot go back, I said finally. But I do not want to stay enemies. Maybe we begin from zero. Her eyes filled. I would like that. It was not the sisterhood I had wanted when I was small, but maybe it could become something real. By December 2025, half a year after that board session, I signed a lease on my own place in Charlestown. It was a one-bedroom in an old brick building, with a view toward the bridge my grandmother used to cross on her way to her first office in 1969. The rent was more than I had ever signed, yet for the first time it did not terrify me. As director of climate redevelopment at Aldridge Urban Holdings was $205,000 annually, with shareholder dividends on top. I had proposed the role myself, a division focused on energy-efficient buildings, adaptive reuse, environmental impact, and long-term community value. It was the kind of work my grandmother would have pushed for if she had lived to see the moment. Conrad called once a month. The calls were short and polite. He asked about work, my apartment, the weather. We both avoided the past because neither of us knew how to touch it without bleeding. Helena and I had lunch every other Thursday. Awkwardly, slowly, she was learning to treat me like a person instead of a problem to manage. It was not the mother-daughter bond I once dreamed of, but it was honest, and that was more than we had ever had. Celeste and I sometimes met for coffee on weekends. We were learning each other as adults. She told me about the pressure she carried. I described how alone I had felt. Neither one of us acted as if what happened was acceptable, but we were writing a different story. In my apartment, I hung my grandmother's portrait on the wall, the portrait that had looked down from the boardroom wall for decades. Sometimes evening light touched the frame in a way that made her almost look amused. You did it, Grandma, I would think. You gave me the tools. I only had to become brave enough to use them. Half a year earlier, I had been invisible. Now I was finally present in my own life. Looking back, I understand something I could not have understood at 30. My grandmother did not give me a controlling stake because I was superior to Celeste. She left it to me because she trusted that power would not make me into my father. Dyslexia is not the defect my parents believed it was. It is part of me, like my visual memory, my patience, and my ability to see connections other people miss. The same traits that made me slow in their eyes helped me recognize the truth when everyone else looked away. Conrad measured value by degrees, titles, and performance. Beatrice measured value by character, kindness, and how a person treats someone with no power to fight back. And now I get to measure my own worth, not by my parents' disappointment, not by my sister's accomplishments, not by the judgment of strangers, by my own standard, my own work, my own truth. If you are hearing this and you recognize yourself in it, if you have ever been the ignored one, the dismissed one, the person they assumed would never become anything, I need you to hear me. A hidden fortune is not required for you to matter. What is required is the moment you quit begging for approval from people determined not to offer it. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors with locks you control. They let you decide who is allowed into your life and under what terms. My family wounded me for 31 years, but I did not have to wound them back to find peace. I had to stop begging them to see me and finally learn how to see myself. That was the real inheritance my grandmother left me. No one can strip that from me. If my story touched something in you, or helped you remember that the blind spots of others do not define your value, tell me. Subscribe to Dull Pain Stories, hit the bell, and leave a comment with your own story. If you want more accounts of regular people choosing themselves after years of being pushed down, follow the link in the description. I am grateful you stayed with me. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next time.